Hello and good morning.
Hi, everybody.
Hello. Welcome to Saturday morning. This is Warm and Cozy Quilting. I'm Jason. This is
I am Victoria.
Smacking her hand on the table.
That hurted.
So you're probably like, where's Danielle? Don't turn off the video. It's okay. It's the first of the year. Danielle has started a new 100 block group. And of course, it's Saturday, so that is when they're meeting. So Danielle is out there teaching a class right now. So today you got myself and Victoria.
I'm pretty good.
Yeah.
I'm a pretty good stand-in.
I think you're fun. It's entertaining.
Yeah, I try to be.
We'll do all right.
It'll be all right.
We got some really good information today, I feel like.
Do.
It is probably more leaning towards your long armor conversation.
Mm-hmm.
But if you quilt and you use a long armor, you might like to hear what your long armor goes through. So don't turn it off. Don't leave.
Don't turn it off.
Stay there.
Also, we're fun. Come hang
We're
out
fun.
with me.
It's fun. Just hang out with us. It'll be fun.
Woo!
As always, the comments are open, so you're welcome to comment along. I love to see the chat. It actually helps me out.
It helps me too.
Right, because it gives us something to talk about, which is always fun. Here, let me get that set up for you.
Oh, thanks.
This is her first day on the job.
It is. I haven't. They change it every single time, so I don't know. I try.
I don't know about every single time.
Not every single
but
time.
regularly.
But pretty regularly.
Yeah, absolutely. See, so there you go. So now you got your comments for the Facebook there, and your comments for the YouTube there,
Got
because
it.
we are streaming live at both on the Facebook and the YouTube. You can say hi on either one.
Woo!
If you haven't subscribed over on the YouTube, go over there and hit the subscribe button. It's
pretty great.
We love it. Also, while you're here on the Facebooks, if you're there, just hit the share button. Do that now.
So your friends can also hang out with me.
Us. I'm here too.
Dad's here too.
Yeah, that's fine. Mhm. Appreciate that. Thanks.
I don't get to hang out here very often. Usually
don't.
I'm like at school or something.
You usually are because it is a school year.
Because it's school year. That's dumb.
It's,
They should make that stop.
And it snowed last night, this morning.
Woo! That was
There was no school cancellation for that.
lit.
That was not expected.
No, it was supposed to be on Monday, so that way school did get canceled, except it snowed last night.
It's a dusting, is what
On
they
a
said. We got like
Saturday.
3 inches of snow. 3. I went out and
so
measured it this
scary.
morning. It's a
He
lot of
did.
snow.
He took one of Mom's rulers and put it in the snow. I don't actually know what he
Actually,
did.
used
It
my
was well
finger.
before.
I used my finger. And it went up to my knuckle, which is about 3 inches. And I said, all right, cool. There we go. Anyway. So, today, we're going to talk about tension with long arms. Okay? If you've got a long arm and you've ever used a long arm in your life, at some point you've had this fight. Usually it's a fight. Eventually you'll work your way through it. Sometimes we don't understand why it's happening. So hopefully this information I give you today can be helpful. There's a lot of information, so this may become a two-part.
Whoa, two-part!
And the enthusiasm from this side of the room is a lot right now. I was not expecting that. But we'll see what we get today, and if we go to two-part, well, then I'll be here next week to do the same conversation, finish it off. But we have some people saying hi, and I think we should stick with our standard Saturday morning hellos because you made the effort to come here. So let us say hi to our friends
And
that
we
are out there.
appreciate you.
Who we got over there?
We got Pam,
Hello.
or Pamela. We got
Hello.
Deborah,
2.0.
and Pam,
Good morning.
and
That's Audra.
Audra. Okay.
Hi, Audra.
I didn't want to say it wrong.
No, that's fine.
Janet,
Hi, Janet.
and Julie,
Hello.
and
Pamela. Love learning new things. Good.
good.
Love the enthusiasm.
We
Hold on
love
to that.
that. Jane's on here this morning. Good snowy morning.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. Crazy out there. Dolores is here.
So, Southern Illinois represent. Yeah.
Whoop.
Love it.
Um,
What's Audra say there? My thread keeps shredding.
Change the needle 3 times. Check the thread path. Change the thread. And loosen the tension. What am I missing?
Holy goodness,
We're
these are
gonna
all
chat
the
about
things.
all of that today.
Every bit of it.
You came to the right show.
Wow, this will be fun. I look forward to this. Hopefully it'll help you out. We'll see how that goes. Good one.
Pam said, no snow here, only rain. That's the usual.
Yeah, let's
Makes
keep it
sense.
that way. Alabama, you don't
You
need
don't want
snow.
this. It's terrible bad. It's horrible.
They don't do real well in the South with snow. They
I
don't have
don't
the
do
equipment
well
for
in
it.
the South, or I don't do well in the snow, and
We're
there's
supposed to be
some
equipped
every
for
year.
it. We don't do well here with it, so.
Good morning, Vicky.
Hello.
And Joanne.
Hello.
And Dorothy. Hi, everybody.
Good morning.
Good
Thank you for saying hi.
AM.
Good day. All right. So that was all those things. A couple things to know about before we go too far into this information. In-store loyalty cards are available for 2024. If you haven't come in and got yours yet, make sure you do that. Don't forget that gets you 10% off all your purchases in store, 20% on 5th Saturdays, and you get a free yard of fabric once every 3 months in store. That's all on the card. You can find out more about that. Come in and get those.
Come in and talk to us.
If you had your loyalty card last year, you do get 10% off your loyalty card this year. So, block of the months, we do have one that just started called Onward. It's a 6-month block of the month. It is pretty. We have one hanging up in the shop. You should look at it. We do have one that starts in March as well. That is a 9-month one. It is a queen size. It's like 99 by 99.
Which pattern is that?
It's the one that's hanging up in the Longarm studio. It has a lot of classic traditional style blocks. It's got a snail trail, log cabin, some half square triangles, flying geese, all those basic things that we're all familiar with, using more modern print. So it's super cool looking in that it's very basic, traditional, but
glad you clarified. Because there's a lot of quilts hanging up in the Longarm area. So I don't. You said that, and I was like, true. Which one?
Pick one. No. Let's see here. We do have Handy Quilter does have a special going on this month. Probably one of the most popular ones that we normally have. This one is the bounce back gift card, basically, that happens. They call it a bounce back coupon thing, but it's more of a gift card. Basically, you buy a machine, and they're going to give you a gift card for X amount of dollars to come back and spend at the shop that you purchased your machine at.
That's
up to $750. Yeah.
That's
so if you buy
a lot of fabric,
a particular machine with a Pro Stitcher, you're going to be up at $750 in money you can come back and spend at the shop. So if you're eyeballing some specific accessories.
Ooh, accessories.
Yeah, totally awesome. Totally worth it. I would encourage you to
super great and super awesome.
All right. Oh, yeah. We got any more new people saying hi? We got Sandy over there.
Sandy said hello.
Morning, Sandy.
Good morning.
Hello. Perfect. And then we have the YouTubes.
Nope.
They're all sitting over there silently. It's okay, guys. Okay. I know you're over there. Hi.
Good morning.
I also, we have probably a few less people because I know several of them are out in the classroom.
Oh.
No, our usual watchers. Well. We should have told them to watch this morning. Heck with the class. No. Just watch the video. It's fine. Anyway. Okay.
It's okay.
So, I think that's about it. You ready to get started?
I'm so ready to get started.
So, usually, the reason I decided to do this topic today is because I put myself in a lot of Longarm groups.
Yeah.
Pro Stitcher, Handy Quilter ones, basically Longarm in general. Because I love to watch people.
Chaotic.
It's sometimes chaotic, but sometimes it's fun to see other opinions on things.
Yes.
Because I haven't been doing this for 80 years. I've been doing it for 5 years.
Right.
I've quilted close to 2,000, if not over 2,000 quilts for customers. I mean, I know you've done
a couple hundred,
around 200 or so. Danielle, I don't even know her number at this point. It's insane. So we have our methods here. We do quilt a lot. We do a lot of quilt for hire. So doing this for us is kind of second nature. Things that people are intimidated by, I wouldn't even think twice about.
Right.
But so it's fun to watch those groups and see what's intimidating people. Which, if you have something in your long arming process that you don't get or need help understanding, throw it out here. Let me see what you got. I might be able to help you in the process of this. But
would love to help with that.
Some of the biggest questions people have comes down to tension.
Right.
Now.
Because that's scary.
Scary because we were told for years when we sew on our sewing machine, leave the tension alone. Just leave it alone. It's not necessarily wrong.
Well, it's not necessarily wrong. Just like with the long arm.
Sometimes you shouldn't be fiddling with things.
Yeah, I guess
because
that's
it's
right.
fun.
You don't want to mess. You don't want to turn the wrong dial.
The wrong way. Or maybe you do.
Snap.
I don't know.
I don't know. Live your life.
Live your life. But what it comes down to is a lot of people have these tension issues. There's several factors that go into the tension problems that people have. So I'm going to start with the basic building blocks because when it comes to quilting, you always want to start with the end in mind.
Right.
And this is from the beginning. You pick up fabric, you kind of want to know where you're going with it. If you buy a kit, you kind of already know which way you're going with it. Now, I'm not judging you. If you just buy fabric to buy fabric, it's totally fine.
That's what I do.
I'm a collector.
I have a lot of fabrics.
I don't really piece. Somehow magically, if it makes itself a quilt, I'll quilt it. I like the quilting part.
My favorite thing, number one, I have a shoebox in my room of fabric that don't match. There's some weird music ones that have words. There's some bee fabric. There's some fruit fabric. None of it really goes together.
Right.
So that's where that goes. And then I'll buy like parts of lines.
Yeah.
And those ones I like. And those ones get put in mom's sewing room. And then magically they are pieced together into something pretty that I get to quilt. So...
yeah, don't
that's
tell all of our secrets. She claims this. It doesn't always happen that way.
No.
But a lot of the time it does. Sorry, Danielle. Love you.
Love you, Mom.
So, But you always want to start with the end in mind. And a lot of times people get to the point where all of a sudden their tension's terrible and it has to be right now. The problem is with something here. Well, I'm going to tell you something. It may not necessarily be that. It could be in the piecing. By the way, be mindful of these things. What did you use to piece with? Did you use 100% cotton for your quilt, or did you get some hodgepodge material? Do you have something that's part polyester? Are you using a t-shirt quilt with material that's going to be a little bit more different, a little bit more finicky when thread goes through it? Take that into consideration, right? Is it a fabric that is 100% cotton, but has a weird feel because of the sizing in it? Should you have washed that? Did you wash it? Did you wash part of it and not the other part of it?
Because that makes a difference.
It can make a difference. There are long armors out there that will not put a quilt on their machine if the backing hasn't been washed.
Really?
Really, very much so.
Huh.
Very popular long arm named Jamie Wallen. He absolutely will not. If it has not been washed, he will not quilt it. I will just go with whatever you give me because I figured you made a wonderful decision and this is what you're going with.
Yeah.
And that's cool. So start there. Know what you're putting on the frame before you start quilting. Okay. Make sure that your quilt, I say square, I mean squarish.
Squarish is helpful.
If you're doing a really cool modern quilt that doesn't have borders on it, and I don't think either of the ones behind us is that situation. It's okay.
Oh, this one does have borders on it. LOL.
With borders, the great important thing of borders is that they kind of help frame the quilt top. So you've pieced all this stuff, you've had bias, so there's stretch and things going on. You're kind of going to use those borders, piece them on properly to give you that frame so the stretch doesn't get out of control, which causes you more problems.
Kind of helps to like square it off. So if your quilt is doing this really cool polygon situation, it doesn't do that so much because you've got the border around it.
Right, it helps it out.
Yeah.
If you don't have the borders, modern quilts have a lot of times don't have borders. You don't want the outside edge to look like a graphics equalizer.
A graphics equalizer?
Okay. It's okay. Anyway. You want that to be nice and straight because that's going to help you line stuff up for the loading process. And I'm getting there. Why this is all important. Trust me. Just bear with me.
Stay with us.
Hold on. So you want it to be squarish, nice and straightforward. Okay. And then you're going to put it on your frame. Okay. Number one thing that I see done wrong most of the time is that my customers are awesome. High five. Go team. People, when they post pictures of why is this doing this, the thing that I always see is that their quilt sandwich looks like a trampoline. Super taut. That is super cool.
What word was that?
Trampoline.
No.
Wrong emphasis on the wrong syllable.
Great.
So, how many of you super tighten your quilts on your frame?
Me.
I have used to. I am no longer doing this.
I also used to because I quilted in 2020 when they didn't know that was why things weren't working.
Right. I had to learn all this.
Had to learn.
So if you put your front quilt on your frame and you snug that up so you can bounce a quarter off of it, it's too tight. Okay? You're actually going to cause yourself more headaches than it's worth. A lot of the times that we do this over tightening thing, and this is part of the reason why we did it and what I had to learn and fight against, is that if you've pieced or you have problems in the quilt and there's fullness, we're over tightening it in an attempt to pull that fullness out.
Right.
So we're trying to overcorrect for a situation that is now just part of the quilt top.
Right.
Okay. So this is where that piecing properly, doing your best to get things square, starting from the beginning, squaring up those blocks from the start, making sure they're the right size, maybe starching your fabric will help things lay the way they're supposed to so that when it gets to the frame, you're not going to try to overcorrect and over tighten.
Right. I found...
Did you see that giant circle we did to get to that point?
I found especially in borders, there's a lot of fullness because they don't really tell, like in like patterns and stuff, how to put the borders on correctly. So it just gets sewn on and then they cut the excess off, which creates a lot of fullness, which equals tightening. And anyway, we just explained all of that.
Right. And we've had videos on borders before, and I encourage you to go back and watch those. There is a better way to do it as opposed to some pattern writers who just say slap some stuff on there, cut the excess off. This will cause you nothing but headache.
Correct.
But over tightening the fabric on the frame is a terrible idea. I do have a nice image here of what I would suggest your quilt looking like. As you can see, that quilt kind of has a little bit of a drape towards the center of the frame space there. It's not pulled super tight. This is exactly what we do every time we put a quilt on the frame. We want it to have just a smidgen of a drape. If it's ever fully straight across, that's going to be a problem. The reason it's a problem is because when we pull it super tight, that fabric is being pulled, that batting is being pulled, and the backing is being pulled. Now we're going to try to send a needle through that really tight fabric with a piece of thread, hoping that it's going to make it through to the hook to make a stitch. Guess what doesn't happen?
It don't.
It doesn't really drag the thread through really well because that sandwich is being pulled too tight.
Right.
So this is usually one of the first things that I see as an issue. Okay, so make sure you back your quilt sandwiches off on your frame.
Also, if you're a new piecer and you're quilting your own quilt, not that I've had this happen, but your 1/4 inch isn't always a 1/4 inch. So you go and you tighten the living bejesus out of this quilt, and now suddenly there's holes in your quilt.
Oh,
because
busting
you pulled it
seams.
too much. Don't
do that.
Not that I'm speaking for personal experience.
Maybe a little bit.
Maybe a little.
That's okay.
But it's okay. It's all part of the learning process.
We have to learn. Nobody here is judging. Also, I would like to say, I should have stated this from the beginning. Words that I'm speaking today are not end all be all. Like, this is totally my opinion, my experience, what I've learned, and what I have found has made my life that much easier. If you have your own method of doing things and you completely disagree, that's totally cool. I would love to hear what your method is because, frankly, it's nice to learn because people have reasons why they do stuff.
Right.
So
live your best life.
Live your best life. But if you haven't tried these techniques yet, or you find that this is something you're doing, I'm going to encourage you to give this a try and see if it helps you out. The other thing that happens with that stretching, a lot of times the reason why we overcorrect it is because our leaders have gotten stretched.
Ooh. Yeah.
Because we've over tightened. So now things aren't staying where they're supposed to be when we advance the quilt. So again, we're still with the overcorrecting. So be mindful of that as much as you can. Don't over tighten things.
Your leaders will not like that.
Leaders don't do well when they're stretched. They will warp, they will pull, and then you'll get this weird just U shape.
Yeah, and then
you've seen it before?
I have seen it before.
And that's how all of our leaders used to be.
Yeah, it was really bad.
We work through it all the time, but man, it's not worth the fight sometimes. Because what can happen is, and that's the other thing that people will have problems with, and you've seen these in the groups, I'm sure of it. People will say, I started on one end and the things were lined up, and when I got to the other end, there was a bigger gap or things were overlapping.
Yeah, weird. Not worth dancing with.
No, not really. But that's what happening is if you over tighten that and you advance your quilt, especially with edge to edges, when you advance that, the only way to get that to be straight across again is to over tighten it to the tension you had before.
Yep.
So don't over tighten. If we don't over tighten, you have a nice little drape. When you advance it and you go back to a nice little drape, it's a lot easier to line things up.
It is.
So Jason, that doesn't make sense. Give me an idea of what this actually means. Not yet. She's so excited. If your Longarm machine has these lovely little ratchets on the end that hold your pole into place, this is what I strongly encourage you to do. You're going to snug your quilt up, just snug, so roll it so that it's snuggish. And then you're going to open up those clamps or those ratchets, and you're going to roll them back about 3 to 4 little notches.
It's like tuning a guitar, if you're into that sort of thing.
I've never tuned a fish before.
Okay, but I have tuned a guitar before.
Okay,
I promise.
So you snug it up and then let it go back?
You snug it up just a little bit. Not like enough to like break the string.
Sure,
but
that
like
won't work.
Just enough so it's a little bit over, it's a little bit sharp, and then you pull it back a little bit.
It's a really nice analogy. Yeah. I never would have got that one. Yeah. That's why I got you here.
That's what I'm here for. I'm here for the cool stuff.
Good call. So yeah, you want to definitely bring that back some and let it just kind of relax a little bit into the frame. Okay? Consider this. That's cool. I love the hand gesture, miming. If you've ever quilted on your domestic machine prior to getting a Longarm, you had to pin-based or glue-based all your sandwich together, right?
Yeah.
While it was getting pushed through and into that quilting machine or that sewing machine, was it pulled super tight?
No, it probably was not.
It probably was not.
I hope not. I'm not really sure how you would pull that really tight unless you had an extra pair of arms.
That, or some people would use like hoops
Oh,
and kinda, like,
see, that
poop
makes
it
way more
in there.
sense than the image in my head of like an octopus person, like holding it all different directions. Anyway,
Getting their cousin over
That-
here. Can you hold this while I do this?
it makes a lot
Sure.
more sense putting it in a hoop. Anyway,
Yeah, no. But you want to hold that. You don't want to hold it snug. You want to be able to let the machine do its job. Same thing with the frame. The frame's purpose in life is really just to hold that quilt sandwich so that way things don't create a pucker. And just enough so that your backing, which you can't see, isn't getting folded over.
right.
Okay?
Or your batting isn't like shifting underneath your top or anything like that. You don't want
Right.
any of that kind of negativity in your life either.
Right. And this all, again, it all just stems from everything we've done with quilting. Hand embroidered. Who here is hand embroidered?
Oh, I have.
I did when I was a young person. My
I
mom
also
very
was
much a cross stitcher.
young person when
Mom
I
liked to
did
make
it.
people do that.
Yeah,
It's fun.
she's actually the one who taught me how
Right.
to. LOL.
But when you do that, you have your fabric pulled taut. My understanding is that hand quilters pull their fabric taut. All these things make sense, but when we come to the frame, the machine doesn't need it super taut. So back that tension off on your quilt frame. Don't pull it tight. Will save you the headache of the tension on that point. Okay? Last but not least, on the frame. We're all still talking frame loading your quilt at this point because it does make a difference. Side clamps.
Side clamps.
Okay. So, who out there has a long arm? Raise your hand. I love that you raise your hand. I can't see you, but that's awesome.
Oh, I raised my hand.
I know
so.
you did, but you don't have a long arm. I've got 5.
Oh.
Now, with those side clamps that you have, how many of you have gone out and replaced the side clamps that came with that frame because they just weren't tight enough to hold on to that fabric?
Actually, have we?
We have.
We have.
We did. When we started off, we changed our attachment system because it just wasn't holding that backing taut enough.
Oh, is that when we had the thing and you clipped it on?
Uh-huh. Mm-hmm.
Is that why we don't have that anymore?
Mm-hmm.
That makes a lot of sense now.
So, fun thing about clamps, guys. The clamps that we put on the side of our quilt to hold the side of the backing only, don't grab the batting and the backing, just the backing, should only be snug enough to pull a little bit of slack out of your backing. You put that clamp on there and you pull that bungee cord and clip it in, and it comes flying back at you at a high rate of speed. You are trying way too hard with that clamp.
You should not be able to play a G off of the bungee cord.
I always tell people in the rental class that if you can shoot stuff across the Longarm studio, it is way too tight. And then Danielle's really frustrated with people because we shouldn't be shooting things across the room.
Yeah, it's really not cool.
It should be snug. You should have a little tension, but really you should not be able to launch stuff across the room with it. It shouldn't be that tight. You shouldn't have to go grab a giant, massive clamp to grab a hold of that backing. If it slips off and it's a slick material, that's fine. I would recommend maybe using like a pin and pinning a little bit of a side leader to it so your clamp has something to hold on to. Or if you're using a ruler base and you don't want to bump into your clamp with the ruler base, that's a really good option.
That's the worst. I hate doing that.
But definitely be mindful of those clamps. And now with the batting, I see this happen often as well as in pictures that people like to share trying to figure out what's going on. You'll always see that clamp holding onto that batting and the backing. The reason we're doing that is because the batting doesn't let the clamp slip off because it gives that texture for it to not slip on.
Right.
Right?
Right.
Well, the problem is that the batting gives. So if the batting is giving and it's being stretched now by those bungees that you super tightened up, when you take that off, that batting's going to draw back up. Now, it may not like shrink right back up and be a horrific situation, but do know that you're adding undue tension and unnecessary stress
it does
to
make
the
that
whole
sound.
sandwich. It does.
Also, I feel like I would be concerned with like putting a hole in my batting. You know what I mean?
I know what you mean, but most battings, most of them a lot of times have scrim.
Right.
And if they don't, you have enough surface area.
I've put holes in battings with scrim. Like,
yeah, that's why we use our grabby hands, not our pinchy fingers.
Yeah. Anyway, LOL.
Just kind of a real conversation there. So anyway, first part of the whole tension conversation, your quilt sandwich. Make sure it's not too tight. Okay? Throw that stuff to the side.
There.
Any questions on that? Anybody? Frames, experiences, all your stuff? Eileen, good morning over there on the YouTubes. Absolutely. Okay, done with that. Off and away it goes. Okay.
It was a lot.
So that's a frame.
That's the frame.
So the next part of this whole thing is also another question that's frequently asked. What needle size should I use for this fabric in this quilt that I'm going to quilt?
Depends. on a lot of things. Like,
Not necessarily.
does it not?
Mm-mm.
LOL.
It doesn't actually depend on the material that's in the
really?
quilt. Doesn't care about the material in
I've
the
been
quilt.
wrong.
You know what determines what thread size or needle size to use?
The machine?
The thread size.
That's thread size.
Mhm.
LOL.
Crazy, right? So our domestics, when we go to sew on those, a lot of the times, like if we're gonna go through denim or something like that, we do need a larger needle that will pass through that stuff better.
Oh,
Okay.
makes sense.
Obviously, that makes sense. You don't want to use a small, delicate needle going through leather. This will end poorly. You won't get.
It won't go through.
It won't work. It'll be awful.
Yeah.
So, when it comes to needle choice, we don't care about the fabric necessarily.
Okay.
Because the long arm needles are a little bit more robust. Even the smaller needles will go through some of the thicker stuff. But
Yes.
it does kind of, I have to say it almost entirely is thread based. Because let's say you're going to do a quilt that is made with denim.
Uh-huh.
Say you're making like a rag quilt or something like that.
Yeah.
Well, you could use a long arm and go through denim material.
Mm-hmm.
What did I say?
Denim?
Anyway, my brain just shut down.
Long arm.
I did.
Oh.
I did not have near enough coffee this morning. While you could use a small needle, a 100-weight thread to go through denim material to make a quilt, realistically, that is not enough material. Like that thread is just going to get beat up by the denim. Like you're not going to use a lighter weight thread
also
with a denim material.
Is the thread gonna won't the thread break over and over again? Like you'll have to keep rethreading it over and over again, or is that just a me problem?
It would definitely probably not go as well as you want to. So again, determining your thread with your material is a good decision, obviously, and then using the appropriate size. I'm sorry, I have to address this one. Nancy, listen, it's not scary, I promise. It's just better to understand the process and know that once you get it figured out and understand why you're doing it, it's so much easier.
It's so cool.
A lot of the times people are just grasping at straws, asking the internet for help, and the internet's like, oh yeah, your machine's out of time. No. Anyway, we'll get to that later. It's really okay. This is why we do this, so we can all get better at this. But also, there's nothing wrong with quilt by check, by the way. Long armors love that. It keeps us in business.
It's my favorite thing.
So, depending on the thread you're using, you're going to dictate your needle size. With everything we do, what I like to do is look at the quilt and understand what it's going to be used for.
Right.
Okay. So if it's let's say, a utility quilt, we're going to give this to our, let's call it a young human, child, kid, whatever, that's going to take that quilt and they're going to love it. Like they're going to live with it. It's going to go through all the everythings and all the great adventures.
Woo!
It's going to get washed a lot, right?
Hopefully.
We don't want to use a small thread. We don't use delicate thread. We want to use something that's a little bit more robust. So like a 40-weight thread, okay?
Yeah.
So with your needle choice, with a 40-weight thread, you're going to want an 18 needle, typically. Now, the 18, we want that more for the reason that it's going to make a hole that is big enough for it to pass through with the thread, so that enough thread can get through so that the hook can grab it and make a stitch.
Right.
Okay? Now, if we use a smaller needle for a fatter thread, when that needle makes the hole, that thread can't get through.
Right.
So then what does get through either gets missed by the hook or the hook hits it, which can then shred your thread.
Ew.
Right.
Vile.
Not great. So.
Terrible to clean up.
Not really. You just have to re-thread your machine.
I was thinking like shredding. Anyway.
Like shredded cheese?
No, like.
Love shredded cheese. Though I did see something the other day that said shredded cheese is made with wood pulp.
What?
What?
Somebody please tell me that's wrong.
Place. We're just ignoring
that would be great. I thought they used cheese graters. Like, I didn't realize. Anyway.
So let's say, though, you're using an 18 needle with your 40-weight thread, but you have your quilt sandwich pulled super tight, as we previously discussed. You could have the exact same problem still as if you were using a too small of a needle. Okay? See how this is all kind of tying together? Kind of talking about the same thing over and over again? So, when you select your needle and you have the right size, everything should work properly.
Right.
If you have too big of a hole, though, let's say you have a 40-weight thread, but you decide you're going to use this 21 needle. Well, that's going to make a giant hole.
That's going to be a
And with that giant
big
hole,
ol'
it's
hole.
going to allow a whole lot of thread to come through.
Hmm.
Guess what happens with that? Thread breaks,
It creates thread breaks
fumbles
or
and nests. Like, it's just
nests.
awful. Things are just terrible. Anger and hostility, all the things we don't want in the quilt room.
around sharp objects, which is probably not
Right.
safe.
Right? Okay, so needle size, super important. But I saw over on the YouTube's Miss Eileen said batiks. Yes, ma'am. This is a real conversation also. So, when we're going to quilt on something like batiks, which are actually a little bit denser in weave, partially from the wax, from the dye, just a different weave material.
Right.
It is very important that we consider using a ballpoint needle.
Yes.
Okay. Or if you're going to be doing a t-shirt quilt, a lot of times long armors get t-shirt quilts for people. The memory quilts have knit fabrics all in them. And if you use a sharp, it's not going to go as well as it will with the ballpoint.
Right.
I got an image to show you guys. Thank you, the internets and Wikipedia, for this here graphic. As you can see, we have, I believe it's the second one down. It says jeans, or is that jersey? It's jersey / ballpoint. That ballpoint is, if you notice, nice and round. So that will slip right through the knits of either a t-shirt quilt or a batik, which is going to help it make a nice hole for your thread to go through. A couple down from that, you see Microtex and Sharps. These are what we typically use for your regular standard 100% cottons, a regular standard quilt. It's just going to go right through. It's going to make a hole. It's going to grab the thread on the backside, and off it goes.
Going to do all the things that you need it to do.
Exactly. So, really nice to see that kind of and understand when people say ballpoint, what does that really mean? And I do think that might be slightly exaggerated just for visual effect. You're not going to look at the end of a ballpoint needle, even visually, and see that super round, but it is a little bit more round. So it does a much better job of passing through the fabrics.
Right.
So we're going to do a t-shirt quilt, and we're going to use 48 weight thread. I'm going to strongly encourage you to consider starting off with a ballpoint, size 18.
Yep.
Okay? So, very important to know what it is that you need to use. A lot of thread companies these days, if you go to their website, they'll tell you what needle would be a really good recommendation. And that's a good starting point. Okay? I sometimes will err on the side of slightly larger.
Right.
So if it says I should use a 16, I may start with an 18.
Right.
If I can't get the results I'm looking for, the stitches don't look right, I may back it back down to the 16.
Absolutely.
If I'm still not getting what I'm looking for, I may go to a 14.
Right.
Very rarely do I go down in size. Typically, I'm going up in size.
Right, yeah. Makes sense. Makes sense.
So, let's see here. What else do I got?
What's next?
Ballpoint needles, we talked about that. This one.
Ooh, this one.
Changing your needle.
Ah.
We've talked about this before. It was kind of a side tangent conversation.
Oh, okay.
But this is a real conversation in this tension problems.
Right.
A lot of the times, we have tension problems, and then we realize, boy, I haven't changed that needle in about 4 quilts.
About time.
Probably need to change that needle. It depends on who you talk to and where you go to the internet for information. There are individuals out there that will say to people, you can absolutely go months without changing your needle if you're using something like a ballpoint pen or ballpoint needle.
You better not be using
If you're using a ballpoint pen, you're actually writing on your quilt, which does nothing to do with what we're talking about right now.
It ain't holding nothing together, actually.
No, not. Useless. Anyway, so here's the thing. You are passing a piece of metal through fabric while it's dragging thread thousands of times.
Over and
Hundreds
over
of thousands of times, depending on the size of the quilt.
Right.
That needle is going to go through some abuse. The machine's moving. It's dragging it and pulling it and beating up that tip, that sharp tip that you guys saw here. Let me show you again one more time. Look, check this out. You see how pointy that sharp tip is? Yeah, now, after a couple 100,000 passes through fabric, guess what? It's not that sharp anymore. It's going to have to be changed out.
Yeah.
Now, you will notice tension issues if you're trying to use an old needle. Swap that needle out. Also, as it's being bent and pushed around, it's being moved.
Yeah.
So it can actually catch a slight bend that visually you're just not going to see.
Right.
But it will make a difference because now that loop's coming through from the top thread and it's over here instead of over here where the hook is expecting it to be.
Right.
So
that causes problems.
Change your needles.
Change them.
Pardon me. Now, my goodness gracious. Where's my picture? Oh.
No.
I had one I wanted to show so bad.
Man.
Okay.
Okay.
It's fine.
You do.
Can I do that?
You
Yeah,
can
give
do
me one
that.
sec.
Here. Okay, give me this, and
Okay.
I'll chat with them.
Okay.
Howdy, everybody. Let's see. Where were we? Where do we leave off?
I don't think
Let's
this is
talk
gonna
about
work.
when, like, we change our needles. So we usually change our needles after, what is it, like every 2 large quilts or so?
No, every large quilt.
LOL. Every large quilt.
Mm-hmm.
So usually bigger throw to queen size. Full size, not large throw. Full size to queen size is what we usually constitute as a large quilt. If it takes several hours,
Yeah.
usually we'll change our needle after
So the
that.
recommendation is every 8 hours is about what you should expect for use on a needle. If it's
Okay.
more than that, definitely want to change it. Does that mean that you're doing a giant king size and you may have to change needles partway through? Yes. Yeah. I mean, if it's a really in-depth, like super intense quilting job that you're doing on a large quilt, you may have to change needles partway through. Sorry about that. But for best results, and especially if it's for somebody else, you're going to put the time and effort to do that.
Absolutely.
If needles were so indestructible, really they should have created something like a vehicle out of that. Because, oh wait, they did. And we all know how well that went.
What is
Back
that?
to the Future. That's a
Oh.
DeLorean. You don't know what? Oh my goodness
I
gracious! Look.
love Back to the Future.
Yes.
I just really couldn't see the picture.
It's a
very well.
DeLorean. It's got little wings on it. Sorry, I went too fast with that. I thought it was funny.
It's okay.
They should have, but they did, and it didn't.
It didn't.
You can still hurt those cars. So, like, yeah, don't.
Yeah.
Change your needles, please. Change your needles for everything that's right in this world. Okay.
Okay.
I think I've beleaguered the needle conversation. Any questions on needles? No? We're good?
Well, I'm just gonna throw it.
Not fast enough. All right. Thread choice.
Thread choice.
So,
Woo.
we've gotten through the tension on the frame. We've gotten through our needle conversation. The next thing you need to consider is your thread. What is your thread doing? What are you trying to accomplish with your thread? Okay.
Okay.
A lot of the times folks will say, my tension looks terrible. I can see my bobbin thread on the top. They're using a bright color and a light color. Guess what? You're going to see both of them. It's going to happen. That's just natural because you're trying to hide two pieces of thread inside of a small hole between two pieces of fabric and a piece of batting.
Yeah. There's not enough room for it to hide anywhere.
Mechanically speaking, it's not really going to hide real well. Now, if you're using 40 weight, top and bottom, it's going to be tough to hide that.
Right.
And there are folks that love and prefer to match their backing thread to their backing and their top thread to the top.
Right.
The reason for this, a lot of times when we free motion quilt, every mistaken bobble we make is very visible. So using a thinner weight hides a little better.
Yeah.
And using stuff that matches hides even better. Okay.
Yeah.
So I don't judge people that want to use two different colors. I, however, prefer whenever I can to use the same color, top and bottom.
I did that the other day.
Absolutely, a good method. And that's okay. But I also use robotics to do it, so it's fairly more consistent, so it's a lot less obvious. But the more you get confident in what you're doing, the more likely you're going to lean to doing that, and it's completely fine. Okay? Now, what can we do to help with those tension issues when I use two contrasting colors? Well, what I strongly encourage people to do, let's say, for instance, I want to use this on my top. Super bright. It's going to be super cute on the quilt I'm using. This here is what's known as a bottom or bobbin thread. This is 60 weight. It's called Bottom Line. It's from Superior Brand Threads. I had one just hanging out in my work area, crazy as that is. So I was able to bring it in to show you guys. What I encourage people to do is find a neutrally color that's a bobbin thread, 60 weight, and match that up with your top thread, whatever it's going to be. Okay, or find something that's complementary. This is also why people like to match their backings with their top. So that way they kind of complement. So you could use a pink on top, and if you use something similar-ish on the backing, it's going to work out really well.
I switched it. I was doing a quilt the other day, free motion, and I did my neutral on the top and my light color on the bottom because. So
really?
Yeah, really.
That's fun.
Yeah, because I had just a regular, just like neutral on the back. I don't remember what it was. And it was one of Grandma's quilts, and she likes being able to see my quilting.
Yeah.
So I put the blue on the back and the neutral on the top, so that way her piecing would stand out and my quilting would stand out on the back.
Nifty.
Yeah.
I like the idea.
Pretty cool.
So,
No
you know,
rules.
really, when it comes to thread choice, if you ask 4 different quilters what the best thread is to use, you're going to get 5 different answers. It's just kind of how it works.
LOL.
When it comes down to cotton or poly, it doesn't really matter in the quilting world. Some people will argue me that all the time. We've had these conversations multiple times. It doesn't matter. Really, what's important is knowing what, again, is going to be the recipient. Like, who's getting this quilt? What do you need it to do? If it's going to hang on the wall and be pretty, it doesn't matter. You can use cotton, you can use poly, you can use big, fat, skinny, whatever you want. Make yourself happy and make sure it looks good to you when you're done with it.
Right.
If you're going to gift it to somebody, I'm going to strongly encourage a 40 weight thread. Again, it doesn't matter if it's Omni, which is nice and flat, or matte colored. Some people like Glide. It's a 40 weight trilobal polyester. It's shiny. Superior has Fantastico. For their side of being a shiny trilobal.
Those ones are nice.
I've used it. I love the way it looks. But sometimes we don't want the shiny to pop out. We really want just the quilting to be in the background.
Right.
So know who you're quilting for. If it's for you, do whatever makes you happy. If it's for somebody, kind of do with them in mind and do the best you can with it.
Right. Absolutely.
If you're going to use a shiny trilobal, that's what I was going to bring was one of those in.
Oh.
One of the biggest problems people have with shiny trilobal threads, Superior, or again, Fantastico, Magnifico, or Glide, if you hold the cone upside down, such as this, and you give yourself a little bit of a spool of thread to start, and that thread doesn't, I can't even see that, it's there, I promise. If it doesn't unspool, this is not a problem.
Right.
Okay? You don't need a thread net for this. But if you can hold that cone upside down and it just starts to fall off the cone, you're going to want a thread net for that.
Yeah.
Okay? What is a thread net? You ever used one before?
I have used them before.
I had this thought, and just now I didn't put it in my notes, so I don't have one in here to show you.
That's okay.
But it's a nice little net that you slip over your cone, and what it does is it kind of puts a little bit of tension on your thread to keep it from unspooling super fast while the machine's pulling it out.
Because that's really scary to watch when you're quilting, and then
Just
suddenly it starts doing that. It's like, oh, we need to hit the pause button because something ain't right.
Around stuff because it's not got any control to it. Yeah. So putting a thread net on is super important if you're using a shiny thread.
Yes.
It helps to control it because the one thing you don't want is that thread to loop around anywhere in the thread path because then that just creates more tension and more problems.
And breakage, which means you have to re-thread everything, which is always my favorite part.
More money, more problems.
Okay.
All right. Let's see here. Big question, can you mix thread weights? As I just told you, absolutely, yes. Change your thread weights out if you need to. It's great to be able to use the same top and bottom. If it's 40 weight, 40 weight, or 50 weight, 50 weight, that's great. But again, if you want to do 40 weight, 60 weight, awesome. If you want to do 100 weight, 60 weight, totally fine. You ever used a 100 weight thread before?
Nope.
I have.
Oh, really?
I love it. Love it. I would not use it on anything that's going to be used by anybody. Wall hanging though, decorative, awesome. You ditch with a 100 weight thread, man, it hides in that.
Know. That's pretty awesome.
It's the best thing ever. So always be mindful of that when it comes to picking your thread weights and your colors. Fun question. Can I use grandma's thread from 50 years ago? No. I'm going to say please don't. Okay? It's probably not so much that you can't, but threads over time can deteriorate. And if they do, they become a little bit more fragile, which means they could break a lot easier. In the long arming world, one thing we don't want is a fragile thread because it's going through a lot of stress and tension going through those tensioners on that machine. It can easily lead to breakage, breaking and snapping of the thread, all that stuff. Super frustrating. So, definitely something to take into account if you're going to start trying to look into grandma's drawer of things that she left you. Should I use that? Please not on the long arm. Okay?
Right.
Dolores says she's always afraid to mix the weights. You know what, Dolores? I love that that is a true concern because really when you start messing with weights or changing weights or experimenting with stuff, you really run that chance of not getting the results you're looking for.
Right.
But here's the deal. I haven't run into a long arm yet that was designed for one specific brand weight of thread. Okay? That's silly. Like, literally, let's say Omni Thread would have to create their own long arm that only works with their thread. And that's just bad business. Yeah, that's not going to work. That's a very specific market of people.
Yeah.
I would probably buy it and use it. That'd be fine with me because I use it all the time.
Right.
But that doesn't work that way. Machines are designed to work with any thread. It does take two things, time and tension. You got to take the time to figure out the tension.
Right.
Have to.
Have to.
Is that fun for us? No.
No.
But
It's really
when
not.
people tell me my machine only likes X thread, insert brand here, what you just said to me is that I figured out the tension with this thread, and that's what I like to use. And that's completely okay. Stick with what you know works. And Dolores using 48 most of the time, you know what? There's nothing wrong with that. That's all we ever use. I love the way it works out. Mixing that sometimes with a 60-weight thread, it doesn't take as much effort to adjust the bobbin tension as a lot of us think.
Right.
So definitely something I would throw out there to consider trying at some point. And typically, once we have our bobbin set, we don't have to adjust it a whole lot more.
Right.
So what's Audra say there? What are your thoughts on Orifil thread for the long arm? I've heard mixed reviews.
I've never thought about using Orifil thread
So
on long arm.
Orifil has a larger cone thread, a 40-weight version of their thread. Orifil is cotton, which is awesome. I think mixed reviews is pretty well standard for any brand thread at this point. You're going to find the people that love it. You're going to find the people that will never touch it again in their lives.
Right.
For a long time, that was Danielle with Glide Thread.
Yeah.
She's worked with it a couple times, and anytime she's worked with it, she's wanted to throw the whole machine in the creek. Thankfully, she couldn't. So
that would have been bad for business. So
right. So we don't do
things
that
in the creek anymore.
But I do think what I will say about Orifil in general is that generally I've always enjoyed that it's very it's not linty for 100-weight thread or for 100% cotton. What's also really nice about it is it's a good quality thread. So you know it's good stuff and it's worth the effort if you have a cone of it to use. I've had customers try to use the small spools of it without a whole lot of great success on that one.
Yeah.
What I would recommend if you're going to give it a shot, be prepared to play with your tension.
Yep.
You may have to adjust it a little bit. Even though it's a 40-weight thread, it may be a little fatter. But let's talk about weights of threads real quick. I have a really cool image here that kind of shows, where's my mouse?
It's on the other screen.
Why are we over there?
No, it's not. Oh, there it is. Found it.
So I've showed this before on our segment when we did about threads a couple shows ago. You can see from right to left, a 30-weight thread versus on the right, the 100-weight thread. There is a significant difference in those threads. So if your top thread's a 40 and you're trying to use a 50, even though it doesn't seem like a huge jump in size, there is a difference in size threads there. It will require you to figure out what that tension needs to be. But there's a method to figuring that tension out.
You just got to do a little dance with it.
Right?
That's what I like. That's
it's
how I
not
like
so much of a dance. I'm going to show them real quick what I have here. I'm okay. I can talk about bobbin tension because it does have to do with your thread. So we're going to talk about bobbin tension. This will help with this a lot. What is Dolores saying here? I'm going to buy some of that bobbin thread and try it. I buy Superior thread online a lot. Yeah, that's going to be a really good suggestion. I would encourage you to go with the neutral tone, Dolores. Also, Superior brand does make pre-wound bobbins. A lot of people are afraid to use pre-wound bobbins. I have zero problems with pre-wounds. I actually like using them, but because we use so many different colors, we typically don't use them because I would have to hold a whole bunch of them.
Yeah.
But they are 60-weight thread, and you're going to get more thread on a pre-wound than you will if you wind your own 40-weight thread.
Right.
So it's like 70 yards versus 180 yards. So
it's just size difference. Consistently that much, which is always nice. Like when you wind your own bobbins, I found that like you don't always have like the consistency of it. Sometimes it's 70 and sometimes it's 75 and other times it's 62. Like it's anyway easier to predict when you're going to run out of thread because it's so consistent, which is nice.
Right. Absolutely. That's where pre-wounds are just the wonderfulest thing ever.
They really are.
All right. So let's just talk about this real briefly and we'll call it a day. I watched a video last night. I was searching for information to see if there was anything I missed in this conversation, and a video popped up in my feed of this guy showing people how to adjust the tension on their bobbin case. I'm going to tell you right now, boy, no. No. Dropped it. It was all these things were just terrifying for me. So please hear me out on this one. All right. So when it comes to tension, a couple things. This is your bobbin case. If you have a long arm, it looks like this. You may even have a domestic machine that looks like this.
That way they can't see your face so much.
Am I not hiding well enough?
No, you're not.
That's okay. The important thing to know about your bobbin case is right here on the side. You're going to zoom in on it.
It's, maybe thinking about it. Oh, there it goes.
All right. So this right here, this black screw head, technology, that's your tensioner for your bobbin case. Okay. Why that's important is that when you put your bobbin in and you slip it up under that arm, you want to check your tension every time you change your bobbin. Okay. The biggest fight that people get into with their machines is there's this old adage going around, it's been around for years, that if your stitches look bad on top, change your X tension. If it's on the bottom, change your X tension. So people are jumping back and forth, top and bobbin. Stop it. Please stop. Look, we're going to set our bobbin tension absolutely first. And once we're happy with our bobbin tension, from there on out, it's our top tension that needs to be adjusted. Okay? This is super important. So once we put our bobbin in our hand, or in our bobbin case, we put the bobbin case on our palm, so the little release lever in our palm. We grab the tail of that thread, and we lift up. It should stand that bobbin case straight up. It should be leaning. It needs to be standing straight up. And then when I pull on that, it should pull nice and evenly. Okay?
It shouldn't, come off of your hand.
It shouldn't come off. It feels like it wants to come off my hand, but it shouldn't. Okay? And if you notice, I'm going to pull out a couple of yards of thread. Listen.
It's okay.
It's okay.
You're not going to
sorry if you're frugal. Stop it. It's fine. This is
really gonna be okay.
Less than a fraction of a penny of thread. It's okay. Once we've done that and we're happy with that tension, we'll cut that tail off. We can get rid of that. You can save it to put your binding on later if you hand stitch. Totally fine. You're going to have to fight with that. If you need to tighten or loosen it, you're going to adjust using that screw. Very micro. Like lefty is loosey, righty is tighty. So if you need to snug it up, and you're going to do just little increments. Think minutes on a clock, not hours. So you're not making big movements with this at all. Until that tension is just right, so that it's pulling off your hand just ever so perfectly.
Now hand it to them through, so that way they know
check this out. Feel that. Sorry. That was silly. All right, so that is the hand test method. Okay. This is drop test. This is what I use. I don't have a fancy tool that I use for this. I've been doing this for years, and this works best for me. Okay. Now, some of you may want this guy in your life. This is called a TOA gauge. Okay. They sell these all over the place. I had some in stock. I don't have any currently in stock. I do love them, though.
They're pretty great.
What's really nice about this is that you put your bobbin in your bobbin case. Slide that. Whoop.
It makes a little click. Oh, wait. Yes, it does. It does make a click.
It makes a nice little click. Okay. Then you're going to take your thread. You're going to go under that first pulley. Whoop.
Right
so
through.
Under, over, and then under this little knob that's right here. Okay.
Right.
And I'm going to pull that. And on that third pull, I'm going to get a little readout over here on my numbers. Okay. Probably right around the 170 mark. Okay. Every brand of thread has a gauge or a chart, what they recommend for tension for whatever brand thread it is that you're using.
Right.
If you're using Omni thread, like this is in this bobbin, they recommend anywhere from 170 to 200 to be the tension on your TOA gauge. Okay. So this is a really good way to find out if your tensioner is at the right level. And then once you've tested it, there's a little razor blade in here, so you can just go boop.
You don't even need the scissors.
You don't need the scissors. Okay. If you are always fighting with your bobbin, you don't know for sure if it's the right tension or not, I'm going to encourage you to get yourself one of these in your life. It will make life a lot easier for you to have a visual readout. After you've used it a while, then you might transfer over to using the hand method, or you can do this the rest of your life. Whatever you do is fine. But every bobbin, you always want to check that.
Right.
Okay?
Absolutely.
I did talk about earlier how in the video the guy dropped the bobbin case. Lord help me. What I'm going to tell you is this. Whenever...
You okay?
Yeah, I'm just making sure this is actually round.
Oh.
If you drop your bobbin case, I want you to understand this. This is very important. This bobbin case, this sidewall, super thin metal.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of substance or robustness to that.
Nope.
If this edge hits your concrete floor, you're going to deform that metal.
Okay? You want to talk about tension problems?
If that bobbin case isn't round and your bobbin drags against one of those not round edges again, it's going to drag and it's going to give you tension problems.
Yeah.
When you put your bobbin into your bobbin case, you should see a consistent opening all the way around that bobbin.
Yep.
If you're looking at it and you don't see that, you might want to consider getting a new bobbin case.
Yeah.
I've heard that people have found a way to round them out. I don't fully believe that.
I don't
I haven't seen
that.
it work well, but I understand how things go sometimes. If that's what your options are, you give it a try. But just know, if that bobbin case is not round, it's going to give you nothing but trouble and tension problems.
It'd be terrible.
Right.
Also, did you talk about the spring inside of that? Because I feel like that also usually can cause issues if you don't have that little spring in there.
So, you can see this or not. Maybe. Not a very good picture. It's just inside. Here, there's a little steel blue check spring that's in there. And it could just be the lighting.
Yeah.
If that's not in there, this could also give you problems.
Yes.
When you put your bobbin in, that little spring gives just enough loft to that bobbin so that when it's inside of its home, it's pushing it against the back of the hook area.
Right.
So that when the machine stops spinning and stitching, the friction from that contact will keep this from spinning out and unraveling inside of your bobbin, which can really cause an ugly mess inside of there. So if you don't have one of those little check springs in there, I do encourage you to get one of those. They're not real expensive. I do sell some here.
Yeah.
But
and also, like, that with regular wear and tear, like, I don't know, hold on.
What are you saying to me?
Okay, didn't we at one point, we went to take a bobbin out and the spring was no longer there and then we couldn't find it? Like, was this a problem at some point or did I dream this?
It can happen.
That is
It can absolutely happen. Those springs can come out. If you ever, like, hold on to that bobbin case and use the compressed air or use a little brush and pop it out, they can come out. Absolutely. They're not held in there by mechanical issues or anything like that. So be mindful of it. They can pop out, but if they do come out, they can go back in.
Yeah.
Just know that. Just make sure that they're in there. They're super helpful for that.
They do get lost very easily, so they fly out and then they disappear.
They can. They spring out. So just be mindful of that.
Because they're springs.
Right.
So,
That's
makes
what they
sense. Hello,
All right. So looks like 2.0 is out. Thanks for joining us, 2.0. Appreciate it. Have a good day today. As for the rest of you, I think that's all I got today. I know there's more information that I'd like to share with you guys as far as tension's concerned. This is definitely going to be a two-parter. I will have to follow up with this next week.
Yep.
Next week, Danielle has another class, so it'll be me again. It may just be me because she's got school next week, so
Woo!
Doesn't matter. You can still come in and visit us today if you have questions. Audrey, let us know how that all goes for you. Hopefully any of this helps you out some.
Have any more questions, you can email us or call us or, come
Whatever.
in and hang out, whichever one. And that goes for everybody.
Yeah, come see us today. I know it's snowy and gross out there, but you know what?
So drive safe.
They're calling Snowmageddon for Monday, Tuesday, and if that happens, you'll need a project. Come see us. Anyway, all right, I think we're done here. How you feeling over there? You good?
I'm feeling so great.
Ready to go?
Oh, yeah.
All
So
right.
ready.
We'll see you guys.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.